I'm looking forward to talking to everybody about this relatively new technology, and yeah, how it can be used to keep people and to keep goods safe. So let me just switch the slides here. And yeah, in some circumstances, a really high level of accuracy and real-time information can actually save lives. So Bluetooth Energy can not only provide that real-time data, but it is quite accurate. And unlike GPS, it can work indoors. There's a good amount of case studies, not as many as you might see in the retail space, but there is a good amount of case studies out there for safety and security. And today I'm going to go through a couple of them and try to pull out some best practices, but really just kind of give you a broad idea of how companies and governments can make the most of Bluetooth sensors for keeping people and goods safe. A few sections, a few different types of case studies. One, I just wanted to give a shout out to Beacons in Columbus. Some interesting things going on there. Another railway system in England. Some other case studies, and then I wanted to get into wayfinding a little bit. There's some interesting case studies there too. And if you do have any questions, there'll be some time at the end. I'll stay on the line. You can also just write something in this direct chat button as well. First, so we're all on the same page, just to give a briefing of Bluetooth sensors. So Bluetooth Low Energy was introduced a couple years back, and it's allowed for a lot of flexibility. Because yeah, like the name, it doesn't take much energy. So you can place these tiny devices that emit Bluetooth in a lot of different places. They don't need big batteries, and if you have they can, like, even with small batteries, they can last a year. Some with a little bit more battery power can last 10 years. There's even solar powered ones. And traditionally, you think of beacons. And yeah, that is kind of now the term for Bluetooth emitters, but maybe not the little devices that you're thinking of. Just those. You can also have devices like keychains that are emitting Bluetooth. You can have pass cards that are emitting Bluetooth. You can stick them on machinery. And they can emit the temperature and emit if that machinery is moving. You can put them into wristwatches, so they don't have to just be kind of like devices that you might see in the corner of a room. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of devices basically, but what they all have in common is they emit an identifying signal, and this can be picked up by a smartphone or a smart device. It can trigger content, or it can trigger an action. So, if a machine gets too hot, it can send out a signal via Bluetooth to a nearby device. That signal can send a message to a quality control manager, for example. Yeah, so that's one way. Or it can be used to track people. So if someone's got their smartphone in their pocket, or they've got a Bluetooth device on them, you can know roughly where they are pretty accurately, more accurately than GPS. So hopefully that kind of gives a good briefing about Bluetooth sensors in general. If you are interested in going more in depth, or you're not familiar with the space, more than happy to talk one-on-one after the webinar. But that should be enough, at least for the content that we're covering today. Yeah, so first case study, Beacons in Columbus. So there's this startup, Piper, and they've done a lot of really good work in Columbus, Ohio. They've really pioneered the Bluetooth for safety space. Back in 2015, they announced the launch of Columbus Safe City. Sorry, in Columbus, Georgia, not Ohio. Yeah, they installed about 1,000 beacons in Columbus, and had 75 businesses involved. And they could use them to send out simple text notifications. And yeah, now they're trying to take it to another level. And people can get notifications if something's happening in the city. Or they can call 911 or text police with a pretty accurate location. So 911 calls in the States, it's really difficult to position someone if they're calling from a mobile phone. And so with this beacon network, they're able to more or less triangulate someone's position and give police a pretty accurate information, thanks to their technology. So that's a really cool project. And they've, it's tough though, because you have to have a lot of beacons set up to cover an entire city. So they covered one Riverwalk with about 250 beacons. Plus, they installed beacons on a campus. One of the universities in Columbus, the Columbus State University, they offer virtual orientation tours and do a lot of different things like send out offers using the beacons in a number of ways. But one way is trying to keep the campus safe, and they can be notified thanks to the beacons of different emergencies. Plus, again, they can know, like the campus police can know pretty accurately where someone is. So yeah, it's a really great project. You do need a lot of beacons to cover an outdoor space. In general, they're used more often indoors, just because the hardware the hardware is pretty cheap. You can get some beacons for even $10, some even less than that. Probably you're going to spend around 15 or so. But yeah, to cover a massive outdoor space, it can get quite pricey if you need a lot of these. But in Columbus, they're doing a great job of covering these massive spaces and provide a really great case study for solving an issue of knowing where someone is in an emergency in an outdoor space when they're on their cell phone, which is a real problem in the U.S. So yeah, doing a great job there, and it's a big project to keep an eye on if you're interested in the safety space in general. Next, I wanted to talk about the MTR Cross Rail in the UK. We talk a lot about different case studies, and we've covered a lot on the iBeacon Trends blog, but never this one actually. And it's a massive deployment in the UK. And they're doing two things that are pretty interesting, and they've done a couple different iterations too. One that I think can be applied to safely, and one that is clearly related to safety. So they've rolled out a lot of beacons across the network. For number one, providing like station auditing to know if their ticketing machines go down, and to alert someone like if a machine goes down, because they get fined pretty heavily if a machine isn't working and they can't ticket people. I think this can be used for safety actually. If you have machines that, if they're not working, they risk your employees or visitors' lives. So it's good to know as immediately as possible if something isn't working. And with their beacons, they're able to notify someone in maintenance to go and check it out. So I think that's really interesting. Plus, there's another one. They give, I think, yeah, this works with, so the first one works with an iPad app, and they give iPads to like the quality control maintenance people. But this one helps drivers to focus on driving. So as soon as they enter a cab to drive the trains, it shuts down all other functionalities except for the apps. They can just focus on the driving. This ties into what I want to talk about next. There's a lot of other employee and goods case studies. I want to talk about firefighters and a project from IBM. Let me get to that slide here. But first, I wanted to mention that if you do have sensitive, secure information in a room, you can use beacons to disable features in mobile devices such as cameras and microphones. You can disable everything, or you can disable, things to make sure that employees don't forget to, or visitors, shut off things that can leak sensitive information. Of course, users need to opt into this, and they have to have the Bluetooth on. But it can be a really helpful reminder for employees or visitors that sharing sensitive information or not focusing on their jobs is off limits. So that's pretty interesting. And I also wanted to note, before I dive into the firefighter and IBM case studies, that you can use beacons to help track your employees or visitors and see where they are in your building and what times and days they were at work. So you can kind of get a good visualization of just general workflow and general visitor flow. Just to keep in mind, so if you do deploy beacons for safety, you can use them for other purposes as well, just collecting data. But two case studies that relate directly to safety. One helps track firefighters. So this one is one of the more interesting ones we've seen. And it's called the Firefighter Accountability and Proximity System, FFAP. And this has been developed to use beacons to send alerts when firefighter is working somewhere where GPS isn't working, which is often the case in fires. You're inside a building, and the GPS signal just doesn't reach you in general inside, never mind in a burning building. So it turns on automatically with the motion of the firefighter. So as soon as the firefighter is moving, the beacon turns on, and it sends out an alarm if the firefighter is not moving. So they use beacon triangulation with other beacons that the firefighters have on them. And a team leader can get alerts and see the locations of firefighters on their Android phone. So if you're outside trying to control something, you can know where a firefighter is, and you can know if they're moving. So if a firefighter stops moving, like they get knocked out, God forbid, and they're just not moving, your team leader can know this and can send someone to check in. So yeah, the time it takes is pretty small for these signals to be sent and received. Plus, yeah, they're very accurate thanks to the beacon triangulation. One beacon alone may be accurate within a couple meters, which is not enough maybe in a small house. But if you've got a couple beacons, if you have a couple different firefighters in the area, then you can pretty accurately determine the firefighter that's down location, or just know in general where people are in the building. So I think that's really interesting for fire departments. Plus, I think for companies in general, to know where your employees are. Maybe it's something that doesn't need to be deployed all the time, but if there's a really high-risk situation, having access to this beacon system, where you can give beacons to different employees and can track and notify them and know who's moving, know who's not, it might be really great to integrate into your own company or your own government emergency protocol. I also wanted to mention for goods, and this goes into good security, plus it can go into worker safety too if the goods are important to your worker safety. But IBM has developed this really interesting app. I think they launched it maybe a year and a half ago. The iOS Rapid Handover. So it's just on iOS. They work directly with Apple. And this lets foremen record essential activities and use predictive analytics for better decision making, according to their YouTube video. But basically, foremen struggle to keep up with productivity. So that's the kind of productivity side, but for the safety side, there's gaps in communication as people move on and off their shifts, and foremen have to in general rely on kind of verbal directives. And with beacons in place on machinery or in different areas, they can be alerted of different risks or errors pretty quickly. It's cool because it uses beacons which can be moved around. So if you're in the construction industry, You can take your beacons with you and set up a system somewhere else. And yeah, so it's a great way to keep an eye on goods. Make sure that your quality control has gone to the right places. Make sure your equipment is running. Make sure your equipment is moving if it needs to be moving. But yeah, basically it helps foremen make decisions on the go about safety and productivity. So it can really reduce errors for machinery and downtime. Kind of like what MTR is doing with their own goods. But this is already out of the box from IBM if you're not looking for a custom made solution. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it is important to keep goods and people safe. Sometimes they go hand in hand, and beacons can really help do that. I also wanted to talk about wayfinding for the visually impaired. Increased accuracy is really important, especially for the visually impaired. Even outdoors, a little bit of increased accuracy can go a long way. And there's been a lot of different companies in the space working towards this, and a lot of different sectors too. So bus companies, for example, they let people hear an alert when a bus is coming or how to conduct a transfer. There's been trains that have been doing the same thing. Universities like Penn State have implemented this. Different banks, I think Barclays in the UK has been working on this. And different businesses have networked and started putting beacons to help kind of people get around stores. Cities have launched, I think Bethel in Germany has launched a kind of beacon tourism program that especially helps the visually impaired, kind of triggering audio messages. But basically, it's important to make spaces accessible for people. And beacons are one technology that can and have been used to do that. Yeah, this use case in particular can be used like if you are already using beacons to send out retail messages or being used for quality control or what have you. This is one extra way that you can use beacons to make a space more accessible. And yeah, wayfinding in general, beacons can be used for. There's one really interesting case study in Spain. I think they actually launched in 2015, or they started prototyping in 2015. But yeah, this last summer they had an update. Yeah, you can see on the bottom of the screen here, there's some watches that have beacons inside them, and then a receiver that gets placed in different areas. And so this project is from Petronor and Technalia. Petronor has about 1,000 employees and work directly with Technalia, which is a research and innovation company. So they were really solving a direct need with this product. But I think the application can be applied to other companies as well, even outside the oil and gas industry. But yeah, they developed these wristwatches and these sensors. And basically, the sensors act as like a control point, and the watches act as kind of like access cards to an extent. Someone who has the right wristwatch can get into only certain areas, but beyond that, the area they can know if an area is safe when they try to access it. And not only can this be configured by the control room, but it can be automatic too. Like if there's a gas leak, these sensors can recognize that. Not only the control sensors, but also the wristwatches can know if there's a gas leak in the area, and they can let the person know, and they can let the company itself know to know that an area or the whole building has a gas leak. Not only is there kind of the alerts for the gas leak, but there's a panic button. So if there is a problem, you can hold a button on the wristwatch, and the company can know where you are in case of an emergency. So they can know, thanks to beacon positioning, pretty accurately where you are, like in the firefighter case study. So yeah, this is a very cool project, beyond just letting the right employees access the right rooms, beyond just notifying employees if there's a gas leak or an emergency. They also have it so that the company itself or emergency services can know where their employees are. Yeah, so really cool project. It's still in the prototyping stage, but it's definitely one to keep a close eye on. So that brings us to the end of our case studies. I just had 2 more things to add before I conclude and just leave some space for questions. First is that we make this point a lot. The same beacon can be used for multiple things, like I mentioned with the wayfinding for the visually impaired. But I wanted to add to that sometimes it's better to focus on different hardware for different needs. If you think something might overheat, you might need to use a beacon that's more heat resistant. If you're tracking your employees, maybe they'll want watches instead of being tracked on their personal devices. You should ask them. If you want to set up only a few beacons for a large area, get ones with a longer signal. If you're testing beacons, maybe you just want to get some cheap ones to try out that have a short battery life. Really think about the needs that your beacons are going to solve and experiment with them. The MTR Railway went through several phases of hardware before they settled on the right beacons. So yeah, really think through the hardware needs. You probably will need to experiment with a few different types if you've got a big project in mind. But yeah, there's a lot of different hardware options out there. So try to get a good idea of what's available, and we can help with that, and try to get hardware that answers to real needs. And of course, that said, BLE is very flexible. They can be very small with very small batteries and go in many different places. So yeah, and you can use them for a lot of different things. The same signal can be used for multiple purposes, but you should have the expertise, foresight, and in general, actual experimentation to use the right ones. Yeah, the other point is related to this, but besides thinking about the beacon hardware, think about what others are using beacons for, or Bluetooth low energy devices for. There's tons of case studies out there. I just mentioned a few of them here. And you may not know BLE can solve a problem until you know what others are using it for. But that said, BLE should be used as a problem solver. It should not be used for a nice press release or to show your boss how innovative you are. We've seen too many proof of concepts in the space that are disorganized or just don't solve any real needs. They're just, experimentations. And that's not good for the companies involved, and it's not good for the industry. So think about what the possibilities are, and yeah, make sure that you are solving a real need of a company or a government. That's all I have to say. I'll stay on the line for any questions. We do have software that works with BLE as well as GPS, and yeah, we have a lot of other geolocation-based tools as well. We can give you a free demo, or you're welcome to just talk to us. We like hearing about interesting projects in the space. We're happy to give you a free consultation about hardware or just about the space in general. Yeah, that's all I have. Like I said, I will be available if you want to say anything in the chat room. All right, thanks for sticking with me here, and looking forward to staying in touch. Nos vemos.